One guy called.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to this July 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Norfolk City Council. We'll call the meeting to order and call your attention to the Open Meetings Act posted here in the City Council chambers. Would you please join me in rising for a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Rehnquist.
Here.
Arns.
Here.
Webb.
Here.
McCarthy.
Here.
Murin.
Here.
Snorton.
Here.
Clausen.
Here.
Hildebrand.
Here.
Okay, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move. Second.
Motion.
Your Honor, I would, do you want me to ask at this time, or you want me to ask?
If you're wanting to move something,
Yeah.
want to do it now.
Right, yeah, then move item 10 to the regular agenda, please.
I think we would need another
Yep.
motion, right?
I'll make a motion with the change of moving item 10 to the regular agenda.
Motion second. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Then item 6 would look for a motion to approve the full agenda.
So move.
Motion second. If no discussion, please vote.
Got one more over there. We're missing one. Thank you. All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Okay, then we start with item 10. We look for a motion to consider resolution number 2023-30, declaring the city's official intent under Internal Revenue Code regulations to incur indebtedness, which includes reimbursement of expenditures for engineering fees for flood control recertification.
I'll make a motion for consideration of resolution number 2023-30.
Second.
Okay, motion second. For some background on this, we'll hear from Randy Gates, our city finance officer.
This is a requirement of Internal Revenue Code if you're going to issue bonds more than 60 days after you incur an expenditure. You have to have an intent resolution saying that you intend to reimburse yourself with bond proceeds. And that's what this does for the Phase 3A of the flood control recertification. We're paying HDR to work with us on getting the flood control recertified. I understand this Phase 3A will take us to the 60% design. So I recommend approval of this resolution, which will allow us to issue debt going forward for this project.
Thank you, Randy. And again, for this phase, which you referred to as Phase 3A, it's the engineering fees. This rounds out the remainder of the engineering fees for the project. Is that correct?
This is the engineering fees to take us to 60% design, if I understand right, and then there will be Phase 3B, which gets it designed to where it's ready for construction, and then there'll be construction contract, construction phase engineering, and work on getting it actually approved by the Corps and FEMA. Did I say all that right, Steve?
That's correct. So this is Phase 3A engineering services. That'd be a 3B engineering services, the construction engineering services. And then once construction is done, there will be the permit itself for the recertification. And then we also update the O&M manual for the levy.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Any public discussion?
Jim McKenzie. I asked for this item to be pulled from consent so we can have some ongoing discussion about the amount of long-term debt that's issued by the city. The flood control is probably the most important and most critical piece of infrastructure that we have in the city of Norfolk, and it must be kept safe and in functioning condition. This is a small amount, the $410,000. I guess my first question is, what is the estimate of the full amount of the cost to completely recertify the flood control after this $410,000?
Jim, if you want to give me a minute, I can bring that up here and give you an exact number. The total, I'll tell you, the total cost of the project with construction. I don't have that right here in front of me. Here we go. The total cost of the project with construction is currently $9,236,796. After this contract, what was your question again, Jim?
Basically, I was asking what the total is. How much of that $9.2 million have you spent so far?
So far, let's see if I've got that.
I'm just trying to figure out how much additional we need to be prepared for.
We have spent to date we've spent to date around $795.
$795,000.
That's correct.
Okay, so roughly another $8.5 million to go. The reason for me asking is because as city elected officials, I want you to take into account the full picture of the debt level of the city and the impact it has onto the citizens, and prioritize what is most important, as this obviously is. I want to compare this issue with the flood control, this issue of the flood control with the issue of the new lift station discussion that occurred last week. The proposed cost of
Jim, I'd have to question the relevancy here. We're talking about the flood. This item, as a reminder, is to consider incurring indebtedness for this phase, this particular phase of the flood control recertification.
It is completely relevant.
So you're talking about the lift station now.
It is completely relevant because it talks about the total issue of debt by the city. That's what I want to talk to you about. And I can't wait until the next public speaking session, because that's in 3 months, because you won't let us speak publicly at every meeting. So I'm going to talk about that in relation to this, because it goes together in the entire debt issuance of the city.
Okay, go on.
So that proposed $9.1 million lift station, which will be bonded by the city, will increase the debt level even more. When you add interest over 20 years, that lift station costs $14 to $15 million. The 26% proposed increase for sewer rates for that lift station over the 20 years of those bonds will cost the ratepayers of Norfolk $25 million. I mention this around the flood control discussion because it's imperative that you folks look at the big debt picture of what's going on and how it impacts the citizens of Norfolk now and for the next 20 years. According to the most recent 2023 budget, the city debt load has increased from $22 million 2 years ago to $48 million today. That's a 118% increase in 2 years. The flood control certification is critical and must be completed as soon as possible to avoid any kind of potential catastrophic failure. I urge you to contrast this with your other spending projects and prioritize your spending as not to overburden the citizens of Norfolk with more and more tax and rate increases. They all fit together. You can't take them one at a time and say this is separate and this is separate. They all impact the citizens.
What's your suggestion?
What's my suggestion for what?
Well, you come up here and say we can't have indebtedness, we can't raise our taxes. There's plenty of pointing fingers, but what's your thought? What's your solution? What's your
I
idea?
suggest for the sewer issue with the lift station, you guys look at some alternatives. Look closely.
What would
at
those
what-
be, Jim?
Pardon?
What would those be, those alternatives?
We had a study done
The study was done, I don't know,
for phases.
2015.
It was done for phases, and that's how it was being
And you never
approached
did,
and
you
done.
never did phase two. All of the flow studies indicate that this lift station you want to build is way oversized and is not needed. The only reason
Which
you-
studies?
How do you know?
Yeah, who says that?
I looked, you talked to all the, listen to the meetings you guys just had. Ramus said it was oversized and said you didn't need it.
So-
Were you listening to that?
What about if there's new construction coming in north on Industrial Road? Is it oversized then?
All of the new construction, your flow is
Are we
only like
planning for the
400
future, or are we planning for right now?
Your flow is 400 gallons per minute, maximum 540 gallons per minute. The current lift station is rated at 1,200 gallons per minute.
Are you an engineer, Jim?
Well, I think what's relative here though is we haven't made the decision on that lift station. It's only been in discussion.
But
It's
the
been in
dis-
discussion, so I appreciate you making the point that it's in discussion.
And again, that is not the point
That- but
of this
it's in
action
discussion,
item on the
ob-
council
obviously,
agenda right now.
But it's still in discussion. It hasn't been finalized yet, but it's out there, being researched and looked at. And all those, flow per minutes and all that stuff will be brought up in front of us again to see if it is reasonable to do this or not. So I think right now, we're kind of jumping the cart ahead of the horse a little bit because that has just been brought ahead and it's been in discussion mainly because it became relevant a few weeks ago again, right?
But beyond that, Shane, we're
Yeah.
talking indebtedness. That's what he's bringing up.
Right.
So we want police station done, we want streets done, we gotta do something with that. And here we are talking about this, it also has to be done. So do we raise taxes? Jim don't wanna raise taxes, but we gotta do it somehow, right? Things have to get done, Jim. We
Make
can't do
appropriate
one
decisions.
thing and wait 20 more years. What are we gonna do? I asked you for an idea. All you're doing is pointing fingers and it's getting old. So give us an idea.
I answered your question. My
No.
idea was look at alternatives instead of spending $9.1 million.
What do you think we do? We do studies. Those are alternatives. We look at different ways of doing this.
That study was done 8 or 9 years ago based on OCT, a pipe plant that never came. It was not based upon those people's sewer getting backed up in their basements.
So your suggestion is let's
Hold on,
spend
hold on,
another
hold on.
$300,000 to do another
let's,
study.
let's talk about
This is
let's go in the weeds just for a second here. Josh, I'd appreciate if you let us do it. I know so with that lift station a few years ago, when it first happened, that was with Woodland Park. Woodland Park corrected their system. And they did put a refuge pond out there that will expand if they have their capacity overflows with the maximum, what we're supposed to be taking from them. So that did happen, and then the last portion of it, we had a ice issue and people. So there is, but that's all been. I think the point is, all this has been presented to council, and the fact that the lift station is discussion because it's in discussion right now. I don't think there's any. Yes, we're doing this or not. We're not doing this. I think we're talking about it, but all avenues of that conversation have been brought forward before anybody makes a decision. And the subcommittee that met on that, I think they were given some good information about what could happen, what can't happen, and what's going to happen with future development, what might not happen. And so I think when we're looking at this thing, I think we're kind of jumping the gun, thinking that all of a sudden this is being approved. It's not being approved. It's right now. It's just in discussion. And maybe I'm looking at the wrong way, but that's kind of how it.
What's that have to do with flood control?
What's that?
What's that have to do with flood control?
Nothing.
What about
at all.
the soybean plant that's up north that wasn't part of this?
I'm not
But we have a
I'm not trying to get an
this
argument.
is getting
I'm just-
ridiculous.
No, yep.
What are the flows going to be from the soybean plant?
I'm not an engineer. I have no
Again,
idea.
I would
So
ask
say-
for the
You're
sake
bringing
of
that up as
protocol.
justification, but
Jim,
you don't even know what
please.
the flows
Jim,
are.
It's another piece of industry that's coming to this town, along with anything else that's going north. There's still land for sale up there for more industry to come in. We have to be
entire
prepared for the
flow.
future, not for when I'm sitting on council, soon after I'm dead, maybe. Who knows? But we have to plan for the future, not for right now.
I think, Corey, what you're trying to say is that you're building for the future, and I'm going to use this in the movie, but the Field of Dreams. What was the concept in the Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come, right? I understand the pipe plant did not come to town, but if we build for the future, we will fulfill that need of the flows. And I believe Steve Ramus over here did mention 2 weeks ago that we can put a bladder in the meantime till we get to the flows that we're needing. And I understand where you're coming from is of the indebtedness, but we need to build for tomorrow. We need to build for the generation beyond us. And I think that's what the study is trying to do. I think that's what this is all trying to do. And I think, Corey, I think that's what you're just trying to say, is that we're building for the future beyond us. And somebody at some point in time has to be willing to step up to do so.
I'm asking you to look at your expenditures. You look at the debt level. You're already 118% above 2 years ago.
How much progress has been done in those 2 years? And my question is to you, how much of the progress has been done in 2 years? Look at the progress that has taken place in this community in 2 years.
What does that have to do with 118% debt level?
Those are investments in the
Everything.
future, Jim.
Everything.
How do you think cities grow and plan for growth? And you can't imply that other local governments or city governments don't take on debt to pay for necessary infrastructure improvements. That is just not true.
But you guys keep taking it on and taking it on and taking it on and say, let's keep spending,
Because nothing's been done in the past. We've done very minimal in the past. That's why we're in the position we are.
No, it's not. You've got all kinds of stranded costs up in the industrial area. You've got stranded costs around the Bradford.
According to you, Jim. Thank you.
That's
It's
the
according to
reality.
your opinion.
It's the reality. And so it appears as though you really don't care about looking at anything critically. I mean, I'm sorry.
You're wrong.
The growth in this
I would
community would
disagree.
not have happened, Jim, if we didn't care and we
If-
didn't make the decisions that we
If
do.
we didn't care, we'd be pushing this on to the next council, and to the council after that, and to the next mayor, and the next mayor after that. We'd keep pushing this on with an increased cost. At some point in time, these are projects that have been pushed along. The can has been kicked down the road, and now we're here.
The citizens are
Pretty similar to Highway 275 expansion, which should have been done 30 years ago and would have cost
25%.
20, yeah, no, a lot less than that. That project total will be 250 to 400 million, all said and done. If it'd been done 30 years ago,
So originally,
a fraction of that cost. This is nothing different.
when that
One
study
thing to
was
look
written-
at too is we're in a cycle of indebtedness. So what happens with cities over time is your infrastructure goes up and then it starts corroding and then you got to reinvest. And doing some research and talking with our city engineer and stuff, what we've seen lately is we've had, and not on anybody, we're not pointing fingers at anybody past, present, or future who's been part of this city and who's worked for us in this community as a city engineer or city, but what happened is so if you take you look at the early 90s, mid 90s, there would have been an influx in what was done with infrastructure in our community. And same within the 70s. And so you kind of, it goes kind of like this, Jim. And I think we're at right now what you're seeing, and I think and we kind of appreciate, you're stating to us now, you're seeing an influx a little bit because some of these things have just been improvements to old systems that were, needing improvement. And so I don't know if I mean, I get what you're saying, but there is a point when you have to go, yeah, we have to, it's a cycle. It's almost like a 20-year cycle when it comes to
Believe me, I
communities.
understand on investing for the future.
Yeah.
My point is, you've got a lot of things you want to invest in. You've got the police station you want to invest in. You've got the flood control you want to invest in. I'm asking you to look critically at the decisions that you make. Is a $9.1 million sewer system today necessary with all the other investments you need to make? I don't believe it is. I mean,
How does avoiding cost inflation factor into your thought process here, Jim? Because some of these projects have to get done, right? Benjamin, would you argue Benjamin Avenue just never needed to be reconstructed?
Benjamin needed to be done. I will say that
So
the costs were expanded beyond where they should have been because of the way
later-
it was engineered, but that's another story.
Had that project been undertaken 10 years ago, do you believe it would be cheaper than it will cost us today?
That's,
That's what bonding allows us to do.
I understand that, but this is-
Avoid cost inflation.
you had this study for
So
the
you're making a very penny wise,
for
pound foolish
15
argument.
years, and you haven't had the economic development in 15 years. What's the life of that?
How are you
conversation?
denying soybean crush facility, new core expansion, the ethanol plant transition? None of that matters?
So
That
tell-
doesn't count?
Tell me what the extra flow is from the new core expansion.
I asked you before, are you an engineer? I'm not an engineer.
I'm just
That's why
trying-
we have these things
So
studied.
you
That's
brought
why we
that
have
up
these things.
as
done.
something that would be.
So, your argument was that there's been no expansion, no industrial expansion, right?
You have nothing to back up what you say when you bring up
Ah.
core expansion.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
You have nothing on that. I've talked to some people who said that expansion will not increase the flows at all, and may even decrease the flows. What do you have that says it's gonna increase the flows?
What about the soy crush facility? You got the numbers on that?
I'm
We-
asking. you
We,
guys are the
we
ones
could
that-
take the rest of the night to do this and go back and forth, but this is getting very irrelevant to what is on the council agenda right now, which I know is your point, but we need to conduct business, the city.
You guys are the ones that are making the decisions to spend the money. I'm asking you to look critically at that. I just don't see it. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks for your opinion. Anyone else? Any further discussion on item 10? No further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, Resolution 2023-30 is adopted.
All right, that moves us to our regular agenda, and item 23 would look for a motion to consider approval to advertise for request for proposals for a crack ceiling project for the street division.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. For background on this, we'll hear from Steve Ramus or?
You'll
Okay,
hear-
Steve.
You'll hear from me today. Will's not in the office today. So this is a 2-year crack seal proposal that we want to go out for. This would be doing the joint seals or crack seals on our city street system. This is something that we'd like to see a contract for on a biannual basis. We did this probably 3 years ago. I think we had a crack seal project in town. I'm sure many of us remember all of that. We were focused on 81, I think a little over here on Queen City. It's part of routine maintenance within any city on your city streets. It's about sealing those joints, keeping as much moisture out of the subgrade from getting in the subgrade as we can. It's possible, the thought process here would be to get this on the street, get it bid, and then it would be a 23, 24 multi-year contract. I think the total was 150 a year, 300,000 total.
Steve, do we do any of that ourselves? And then does the state help out on highways that go through town?
We do quite a bit of that ourselves within the neighborhood portions of the community. And we've actually increased the amount of work that we're doing there. We're just quite a ways behind in getting 100% of the streets sealed. And so this is just a way for us to kind of get back up and make sure that we're 100% sealed on an annual basis.
What about highways?
The state does not assist us with highways. That's part of our maintenance agreement number 19. So we provide that for 275 and 81.
Hey, Steve, can you explain why the sealer is so important?
Why they're
Just
so important?
Why, yeah, right.
It's about keeping moisture out of the subgrade. That's really what it is. We seal, when we pour new streets, new concrete streets, we saw them and we seal all the transverse and longitudinal joints. And it's just about keeping the moisture out of the subgrade. When that compacted subgrade gets wet, we lose, if it's completely saturated, we could lose up to 30% or more of the bearing capacity, the capacity of the underlying soil to carry the loads that the pavement carries. And so it's just very important that we keep that moisture out of the subgrade. That's why the purpose to storm sewers are there to
Can you
convey
explain the
that.
process, like, what goes into
The process?
Yeah.
Depending on the size of the joint, you blast it, and then you've got a hot pour. It's a hot oil seal that goes in there. And then typically you cover that with either a tissue or there is a chemical application that you can apply as well. It keeps that rubber or that hot oil from tracking up in your tires.
Steve, we did some of this last year or the year before, both.
It's been a couple years
yeah.
since we did it, since we used a contractor for the service.
Contract, okay. That was my question, whether we've engaged in a similar RFP in the past for this kind of contract work.
I think historically on our arterial streets and state highways, we've always contracted that out.
Yeah. Okay. Any further questions?
And that would be to expedite the time that things are, I guess, bound up with traffic and traffic control and everything.
Correct.
So it expedites the time that it would take our own staff to do so.
These guys are, the companies that do this, they're
what they
experts
do.
at this. They move in, they move fast. If the joints exceed a certain width, they're routed. So we don't really have that capability to route. We tend to focus on the smaller joints. Our crews are very effective in the smaller neighborhood streets. It takes a little bit less traffic control, just safer for our staff. And
How is it determined which streets are addressed with crack sealing?
I would focus this on 275 and Highway 81 first, and then I would go to our arterials. And as much as we could do, we have not identified which streets right now, but 275, Highway 81. And then we would pick 2 or 3 major arterials. 150,000 a year, that would probably we probably wouldn't get off 275 and 81 with the first 150. The second 150 might get us off of those, and then we would look at some of our concrete sections, First Street, Benjamin Avenue to the west of 13th, 25th Street. That's probably needing some seal. So those major arterials is where we would focus these contracts.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Public discussion?
Steve, this is kind of maybe off topic a little bit, but so like when Brosh Avenue's done, when we did Brosh, how long before we go back and seal the cracks and?
Oh,
How long does that stay?
at a minimum, about every 5 years, you should be. I mean, you should be out there. If you can get your city caught up, usually on an annual basis, you can almost get through the city and touch things up. At an absolute minimum, every 5 years, you want to be sure you're sealed up.
I'm just thinking of all the new concrete. How do we keep the good?
Yep, that's exactly what it's about. It's planned preventative maintenance.
Any other questions or discussion? Public discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 24 would look for a motion to consider approval to award a contract to Elkhorn Paving Construction Company Incorporated of Norfolk for the Johnson Park Improvement Project Bid Package 2 Upper Park Improvements Project for an amount of $447,430.25.
I'll make a motion for consideration and approval.
Second.
Motion second, and for some background on this, again, Steve or Anna?
Yeah,
Anna, okay. Anna Allen, our Assistant City Engineer. Good evening.
Good evening. Mayor and Council. On June 20th of 2023, we received 2 bids for this bid package 2 Johnson's Park Improvement Project. Elkhorn Paving Construction Company was the low bidder at $447,430.25. The second bidder was A&R Construction Company of Plainview, Nebraska. Their bid came in at $523,247.36. Our engineer's estimate was $458,239.35. So we would like to get an approval to award the contract to Elkhorn Paving, who is the low bidder on this project.
What was the estimate again?
The engineer's estimate was $458,239.
I'm gonna add some supplementary information to that Anna doesn't have here. So looking back at the one bid that we had received when we put this all out as one package, that was, we'd received one bid on that. Currently, with this award, we would have bid schedule A and bid schedule B on the original contract would then be fully awarded. Back when we got the one bid, the total for bid schedule A and B was $3,414,699. With this award, our total between the change order we did to United and then this bid would be $2,018,335. I didn't do the math there on the savings, but about $1.4 million in total savings. If we go all the way back to the engineer's estimate that was done a couple of years ago on the project, that was $1,850,000. And so the delta, there's an up delta to that older original estimate of $168,315. So this does keep us within our current budget on the project.
I think it'd be nice to kind of explain how that works, because we get this brought in front of us for different city council meetings, and then also we approve, project bid package 2, and it feels like when we approve these that it wasn't in the budget to do the park before. Like there was a budget set before this park started, and the funds were put together to fund this, and then all of a sudden it comes in front of us, and then we approve, this bid package, and it looks like on the flip side of it that we're spending more money that we wasn't allocated for this project. So can you kind of help us put that out there so these guys can have
Sure.
some information on how that looks?
Yes, so the original project, the way it was split up was, there was different sections of the project as a whole. So, there was a section for, trail improvements, there's sections for the sports court and the water feature, and then there was, separate part of that was electrical. So it was broken apart, as that, when we bid it out originally, and when we got that bid, it was over engineer's estimate. So after we rejected that bid, we went back through and started grouping different areas of the park to where we could bid them out more as the specialty items, so we could group them together. So let's say, whoever's gonna come in and put a bid number in for, the trails and everything else, they might know a lot about building trails and doing some storm drainage, but they're not experts in the field of sports courts and ice rinks and water features. So we had broken that out into different bid packages. So we bid out, bid package 1 was the sports court and the water features, since that's a more specialized item, hoping to get, somebody that's familiar with just those portions of the project. Same with this bid package 2 was mostly for the concrete trails in the upper park area. And then after this, we're gonna have other bid packages, one's just for electrical. So just, looking for that electrical contractor instead of having multiple, having a general contractor, then, trying to
Right.
have subcontractors for all
I
of
get where
these
you're coming
different
from.
items.
So essentially, it was a base package put together, and then you're trying to find the most
Cost-effective.
friendly person to do that particular
Correct.
project. So what it's done though is this is kind of different than we've done things in the past. Usually we approve a budget and then things are done, and then we get either a change order or whatever at the end, or no change order. So this is kind of done, I would say, in a different way than we've done in the past. Am I right on that?
So we had a big budget for, there's actually 7 different bid schedules that went out in that bid package earlier this spring. And we received the one bidder that was substantially over, some 2 million or so over our budget and over engineer's estimate. So we rejected that bid, and then we came back a week later, couple meetings later, and got permission to basically bid these things out in multiple bid packages versus one bid package. So we're still working on the same budget.
Right,
It's
that's what I'm
just
trying to
broken
make.
down-
What I'm trying to
broken
make,
down into
yes.
smaller.
But
get
to,
out
to
there,
Shane's point,
smaller
in order
pieces.
to maintain that budget, to make that original budget, we've had to get a little creative in terms of breaking down these projects and marketing them to specialized contractors to
Correct,
get the
yes.
work done.
But in doing so, we bring it in front of the council again and again, and it causes some fatigue out there in the community about hearing these numbers
Yeah,
over.
no, it's a good point.
But
It's a good note to make.
So I
that-
just want to make
yep.
that out there, that this was not.
Yeah, it's not additional. It's still part of the original budget that was approved some time ago for the total project. Yeah.
I think maybe the question is how many more of these do we have? There was, how many did you say, 7 total?
No,
So-
we'll have 5.
There were 7 in the
There
original
were 7 in
package.
the original, so now in this one, we'll have, is there 4 bid packages?
So we did the change order. We've got
Is
this
it-
bid package. We'll have
bid-
one for the basketball.
Bid package
Ice.
1 was for the sports court and the water feature. This bid package 2 is for the upper park trails. Bid package 3 was for the structures, so the picnic shelters and the amphitheater. And then bid package 4 will be for the electrical.
So as of
That'll
right
be
now,
4.
we're on pace to be kind of where, as far as what the original, I mean, you can't really give
Yes.
that up, but you can maybe.
Yes.
okay,
On
all
track to
right.
be on budget? Is that what you're asking? Yes.
Sounds like we're
Yes.
about $250,000 under right now.
Yeah, so this, I would say this has us just about right on the projections that we had. Kind of, when we had the bigger bid bust, we sat down and looked at it and said, okay, where do we think we're gonna head? And so with this award and then the change order we did, we're essentially right on track budget-wise on the project.
And how wide are those sidewalks that they're pouring? I'm looking at this Group B, in that 3, 4, 5, 6 area, and A&R's concrete costs are way higher, from 50% to 100% higher. I mean, are they bidding the same width, same everything?
Yeah, they both have the same plan set. I believe the sidewalks on the lower trail are 6 foot wide, and our trail, our larger bike trail up top was at 8 foot, I believe. So yeah, they should be bidding the same width, same thickness sidewalk.
Okay.
Sometimes it depends on how much volume they can pour in a day with those guys, like what company thinks they can pour so many yards a day. And so sometimes that's why those bids you'll get will fluctuate so much, because if some guys can put a lot more concrete down in a day than other companies can, so they can't sometimes compete head to head when it comes to yards put on the ground, you know, as far as
Okay.
they can charge. So
'Cause
you'll
there's a
see
lot of
that, you see that sometimes with, you can probably explain that a little better than I can, but.
That sounds accurate, Shane. I mean, there's always some differences. The contractors also, a lot of time, it depends on what kind of equipment they have that they're gonna be using. You know, if they're gonna be using a machine to pour it might be cheaper than, you know, if they're just gonna be using, you know, hand tools.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Anna. Any public discussion? Okay. Hearing none, any further discussion, council? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 25, I would look for a motion to consider approval for change order number 4F with Perry Reed Construction LLC for the City of Norfolk Transfer Station Site Improvements Project, resulting in a net increase of $749.17.
Make a motion for consideration and approval.
Motion and second, and Steve Ramus, some background on this, please.
Mayor and council, this is the final change order for the transfer station project. That project was originally awarded to Perry Reed Construction at $4,350,000. Second low bid on that project was 4.9, just a hair over 4.9 million. We had a couple change orders in the past. bringing the total prior to this change order up to $4,561,392.80. This here being the final change order, there's about 13 adds and deducts that occurred throughout the project. They occurred through primarily through phases in the construction of the building itself. These are changes that would have occurred on any one of the contractors that would have been awarded the project. The total of the net total of the changes is the $749.17, bringing the total adjusted contract for Perry Reed to $4,562,141.97. With this change order, essentially this would close the project. There is one payment left. We have paid out 50% of the retainage. We're still holding somewhere in the range of about $225,000 or so in retainage, just to be sure some of the final punch list items get done. Those are reasonably minor at this point. So you will see a final pay app come through probably at the next council meeting.
Okay.
Questions?
Thank you, Steve. Any public discussion? No further council discussion. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 26 would look for a motion to consider approval of change order number 1F with Municipal Pipe Tool Company for the sanitary sewer rehab Omaha Avenue project, resulting in a net decrease of $8,052.66.
I make a motion.
Second.
Motion second. And for some background on this, we'll hear from Chad Roberts, our Water Division.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. What we got here in front of you here is the final change order for the sewer reline project we had there on Omaha Avenue. That was originally awarded on May 2nd, 2022 in the amount of $768,436.75. This change order is based on the material. Some of the material wasn't needed on the project. One of the biggest items that you'd see in your packet, there was $7,500 that was saved on the trimming inside the manholes. Project went extremely well, so they didn't have to do that trimming that they had it estimated in the budget. So the change order here is an $8,000.52 or $8,052.66 savings. So it brings the overall contract, the payout for it would be $760,384.09. So staff recommends approval. Any
Great.
questions?
About how many linear foot was done for that project?
That had a total of, let's see here, we had 4,100 in the 21 inch. And then in the 30 inch, we had another 4,100, so about.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody went down there and saw it when they were doing that.
I did.
It was real interesting.
It was
looked like
amazing. I've never seen that before,
yeah,
and it was,
it went really smooth.
Yeah.
And it kind of looked like Laffy Taffy going in the sewer.
Right, it did, yeah.
Bright pink liner going down. Had no complaints from the customers. Everything went smooth. Really recommend that we look at that as another rehab going forward on the
It's an amazing process for what, you take that linear foot that you've worked on, how much sewer line would have been dug up and replaced, and how much that would have stopped traffic on 275. And I mean, there was minimal.
Added cost to the
Right,
entire
added
project,
cost,
yeah.
and it was minimal. It's amazing technology, honestly.
Yeah, it was a little about 11 and a half, 12 days is
Yeah,
what it took.
that was impressive.
From the very beginning to the end.
And the projected added life to the sewer line with this is about what?
About that 35 to 40 years is what they're telling us.
But how old technology is that?
Sewer lining? Oh, it's been around for quite a while. There are communities out there that have completely relined. I know Woodland Park did a bunch of relining up in there on their sanitary sewer system about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, kind of after that 2010 flood.
But yeah, I mean, we had one lane traffic going there for a couple of days where we'd still have it right now if we were doing
for a
complete
while.
replacement. So.
Sure.
It'd be, yeah.
So in your opinion, good experience with this?
Absolutely.
With everything?
Absolutely. Crew was amazing to work with.
Yeah.
They were very, very punctual when it came to keeping people up to speed what was going on. We had I guess the smallest incident we had was at the mall there where they had a odor smell. And then that was something that we learned on going forward. They had a floor trap that was dried out, and then so it had a smell of resin, fiberglass resin in there. So unfortunately, the fire department got called for that one. But after that, we made sure every time we talked to anybody, make sure their floor traps were wet and everything else. So, but yeah, it went real smooth.
Good. Thank you, Chad. Any further discussion or public discussion on this? Further comments? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
All right, that concludes this meeting of the Norfolk City Council. We are adjourned. Happy 4th of July.